What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode number 4 of Uncommon Anomaly with James Crawford. Today, I got something really special. I want to share with you a talk that I gave in Greenville, South Carolina at the Do It Now conference. It was in a bunch of realtors, and so that's not the normal audience that I speak to, but it was an enlightening talk, and we spoke a lot, or I guess I spoke a lot about voice technology, 5G, and where we're all heading as a society. Also, I spoke about human psychology quite a bit, specifically about status and how we're driven by significance at status and how you can use that as an entrepreneur and how you can use that just in your life. Because we all have one of those, right? We all have a life. At least I hope you do. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and dive right into it. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get something out of it. Here we go.
I want to do something for a second. I'm walking right in front of that bright light. I want to do something real quick, though, before I start. How many of you guys left your smartphone at home today? Nobody. How many of you don't even have a smartphone? Like, you just have a basic phone? I know Joe already asked it, but nobody, right? So that's kind of what I want to talk about. Emergent technology. At one point in history, none of you had smartphones, even when they first came out. It was like 1 in 6 people had a smartphone, and now everybody has one, especially if you're utilizing it for your business. So we saw that shift probably around a decade ago. We started really seeing a massive shift away from this old media. How many of you, probably get some hand raises here, how many of you only had like 3 channels on your TV when you were a kid, right? And then you got the cable box, and then you had cable, and now you have Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, Amazon Prime. You don't even really know what to watch. You probably spend like an hour deciding what you're going to watch before you watch it, and you fall asleep, and then you didn't even get to catch up on your favorite show. So we have all these choices. We have an abundance of choices, opportunity, all of this stuff at our hands now. And we started seeing this old media really die out with the beginning of the internet. I started getting on the internet, I think, in like the mid-90s, 97, 98. And from there, what really happened was the power shifted from a select few, ABC, NBC, all of these businesses that had all of your attention, and the power started trickling down to you. It started coming to you. And so up to that.
You'll have to use
that one. Okay, cool. All right. So the power started trickling down to you, and it was in your hands. And it took some time for that really to evolve and really get to where the cost of access was lower, the ease of entry and ability to learn how to do these things, how to create content, how to be in front of your audience, all of these things. It took some time for it to get there. And what happened was all of this larger things, you probably own some of this stuff, all of this stuff now fits in your pocket. So I want you to take a second and really think about not just things that you own, devices and things like that, but what kind of ideas and processes and things like that are becoming a little more democratized and are becoming more accessible. How are you able to approach content development? How much does it cost you to develop a podcast? How much does it cost you to create a YouTube series? All of these things, even 5 years ago, were a lot more expensive than they are. You can pretty much do all this stuff for free now. You have your phone. I definitely recommend investing in better equipment, especially, as Marlana was saying, if you're taking these shots for the houses, you definitely want to make sure that you have the best quality photos that you have. But all this stuff, we're constantly going down this path to where more and more of this is going to be in your hands, and it's going to be easier to access. And what really happened was the rise of 4G LTE. 4G LTE stands for fourth generation long-term evolution, right? So I worked for Verizon in 2013, and that's when I really started seeing this ramping up of all of this stuff that I'm talking about. LTE had been around for a few years, but iPhone had just gotten it, I think like a year or two before that. And so once that happened, this is when people really started streaming Netflix on their phone. They were on YouTube all the time. And this is where people start looking at the youth or complaining about the youth being in their phone all the time. Well, it's not just the youth. It's everyone. Everybody's in their phone all the time now. And it has a lot to do with 4G LTE. 5G is right around the corner. And what we're going to see with that is going to make massive shifts in the healthcare industry, real estate industry, pretty much every industry that it can possibly touch. It's going to shift it in ways that we really can't understand. So my goal today, and I'm not going to speak for very long because I know everybody's been here for about like 5 hours and everybody's probably ready to go home, just to get you to think about technology in a different way, and not technology just in the sense of a device. Technology, a lot of the things that Joe was telling you today, a lot of these systems and processes that Tony Robbins uses, that's technology. That's essentially technology that you can utilize to become a better person. And so there are two things here, data and attention. The world revolves around data and attention right now. And data is super boring. I'm not a data nerd. I struggle to crunch the numbers sometimes, but as Joe just explained to you, the numbers are vital. They're vital to your success. And so when you crunch the data and you look at not only how important it is for you to crunch your individual numbers to reach your revenue goals and all those things, to understand that there's an amazing amount of data being generated every moment. I think the statistic is somewhere like in the past 2 years, there's been more data generated than in the entirety of human history. And that's one of those things where if you stop and you think about it, your brain can't even really compute it. But here you see that in 5 years, there's going to be 50 billion devices, far more than humanity. So when we start thinking about AI taking over humanity, it's like, now it kind of looks like it's actually a possibility, but the jury's still out on that. And this right here is something I want to point out. Only 0.5%, so half a percentage of data that is out there is being utilized. So think about that when you're looking at Facebook ads. If you're not running Facebook ads right now, you absolutely need to be. That's one of those things. The advertising cost over the past year to 2 years has really drastically increased as more larger companies flock to Facebook and they realize they're wasting all this money on postcards and print and billboards and all of that stuff. They're spending a ridiculous amount of money and they don't have the data targeting capabilities. They can't target a single mother who likes to use her credit card at Whole Foods. They can't target a certain type of person. With Facebook ads, YouTube ads, Snapchat ads, all these things you can do that. You have this data at your hands and your competition is not using it. Attention. All right, so this is where it gets interesting because one thing that I find is a lot of people are very resistant to change and they're resistant to embracing this new world that we have. We like to, this is one of the ways we gain significance, I guess. We like to feel like we're above this thing, this idea of being in our phones all the time, or we're complaining about people being in their phones all the time. And what we're really doing is we're pushing away the truth of how the business world is. If you're refusing to embrace that this is where people's attention is, then it's only going to hurt your pocket. I was at the beach like a year ago, and I was sitting by the pool, and you know those planes that fly by and they have the banners behind them? Well, I was sitting there, and I looked up, and I saw the plane fly by, and I looked back down, and there were 5 people sitting around the pool. And every single one of those people was on a device. They were on a tablet, a Kindle, or on their phone. And I thought for a second, I was like, wow, those 5 people 10 years ago would have noticed it. Now, those advertising costs that they went toward that plane, they missed those 5 people and probably thousands more down the beach. They didn't even see it. They were right here. And so this illustrates it perfectly. U.S. adults will spend an average, I don't know if you can read it, it's kind of blurry. U.S. adults will spend an average of 203 minutes per day on their mobile devices in 2018. That's up from 88 minutes per day just, 6 years ago, right? So that's 3 hours a day. People are on their phones 3 hours a day. And some are more, some are less, and I feel like it's going to go more and more. Like this direction that technology takes, we're not going to go backward. We're going to go to a more connected world where it's easier to connect to people and access people. And there are some downsides to that, but as a business person, you want an entrepreneur, you want to embrace that. And so this just kind of is to illustrate that really it's always been that way. We like to bitch and complain that people are on their phones all the time, and there are real issues. I mean, there are relationships that are damaged because people are in their phones all the time. They're not present. It is a problem. But people are also reading books all the time. When I was a kid, I didn't even play at recess. I sat down and read books. So that made me the most popular kid in the world. But so people have always done this. These things take new forms. Television has morphed into YouTube and Netflix. Radio has morphed into podcasting. books and newspapers have morphed into blogs. So it's not that human behavior is changing so much, which is one of the fundamental things as an entrepreneur. You should become a master of human psychology and human behavior, and even biology to an extent, because it's all very much rooted in evolutionary biology. But these behaviors haven't changed so much, just the way that we express them has changed. And so this right here is what I feel, and we're coming to the end of this, what I feel is the next thing for people to focus on. Interestingly enough, this talk aligns with the 10-year anniversary. I think it was yesterday or the day before of the App Store. So about 10 years ago, Apple released the App Store. And the first things that they had were like Crash Bandicoot. I think 9 out of the 10 most popular apps were games. They had Pandora, Facebook. But what they really needed was that killer app to come along, and those things that, we could all probably have some type of different, unique app on our phones that no one else in the room has. Because these apps are highly personalized, very powerful, and way more powerful than the computers that we had just a few years ago. Alexa, podcasting, voice technology, it's going to become just what's normal in your day-to-day life. And it seems super strange to us right now that we're constantly being listened to, but it's also similar to how when smartphones first came out, like I said, I worked at Verizon, there was this huge pushback from people who were generally like 60 or older. They were like very wary of smartphones. They felt like it was an invasion on their privacy and their life. They didn't want to share anything on Facebook. They're all on there now. And this is going to become the same thing. It's strange now, but you're going to get used to it. And they're going to be in your cars. Pretty much every car by 2020 is going to have some voice-activated command, and you're going to say, hey, drive me so-and-so, and you're going to go. And it's going to be tied into some of these automatic vehicles that we're seeing as well. So this is going to rise to 55%. Half the people are going to have voice-activated speaker in their home. I go down in the morning. I have a morning routine. I go out. I get a little bit of sunshine. I drink some water. I go down to my office. And the first thing I say is, Alexa, play my flash briefing. And so what a flash briefing is it gives me just a couple snippets like the weather, what's the traffic like for the day, a couple snippets of podcast, entertainment, all of those things. So this is where I think a beautiful place to focus your energy if you're looking at content. How Joe was talking about the 7 levels of communication, and you have the info. I think content development is somewhere between the info and the influence space. So you can kind of go back and forth if you create compelling content to where if you're a trusted name, your content is influencing people. If you're not, it's more of an informative type thing. And if as part of building a personal brand is developing content, videos, blogs, all these things. And the beauty in this, if we go back to 1 in 6 people own it right now. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. You are, I'm assuming, have something that you know that they're starting to market on this? Because right now, we don't really have marketing on it. I've got both in my home, and there's no real marketing. I do,
yeah, so
I listen to my podcasts and stuff.
Right, so
are they moving towards that now?
I think at some point they will. Right now, it's mostly content. So if you're going to develop something, I wouldn't make it advertising. I wouldn't make it an advertisement. It would just be, podcast. Like say if you developed a podcast about where you talked about just how, it doesn't have to be specific to real estate. I mean, it could be like you talk. One of the things that is probably a better example is an email list. People will use email lists and they send emails of the 10 most expensive homes that are in that area. And the same thing you can do with podcasts. You can find these interests that surround real estate, and then you become known for that, and just make it informative and entertaining. So this is going to be 55% by 2022. I mean, that's a projection, so who knows what it will actually be. But it's going to follow a similar path to this, where right now this feels strange. This felt strange, to some people at some point. Now it's common life. I mean, I really feel like at some point we're going to be having music playing on one of these things, and we're going to walk out and we're going to tap the speaker that's embedded in our ear, and then the brain chip is going to transfer the music to the... I really feel like we're going that way. And that sounds super strange. Probably nobody in here wants a brain chip, but I think one day I'll be the grandpa, and my grandkids are going to be like, why don't you get a brain chip? Everybody's got them. This is normal. So I think we're going that direction. And then we talk about human psychology, right? One of the things that Joe mentioned was this idea of significance, the 7 human needs, I think was early on in the speech. And I'm thinking about how significance ties to status, right? Really what we're talking about is status. And it's one of those things, again, we like to feel like we're above. We don't want to feel like we're driven by status because it sounds like the person who buys a car to impress someone. But everything is tied to status. It's even just like one of my things, I think about like one of my goals. I want to go to a restaurant and I don't want to have to look at the price on the menu. I don't want to have to worry about how much the wine's going to be or the food's going to be. Because to me, I feel like once I get there, I've made it. Like that's status for me. And it's not about showing off to other people. It's about, this is my status. I feel good about where I'm at. It's why you dress nice. It's why you want to look good, because there's certain status. It's why you want people to think you're intelligent. It's all about status. It's why people will buy a house with a 4-car garage when they have 2 cars. You know, people do, or they'll buy a pool and they barely use it, or they get a gym membership and they don't use it. It's status. So we're driven by these things that are really deep within us. And I think that understanding human psychology and being open to the direction that we're headed as a species, not just as a society or even as entrepreneurs, but just as the human species, we're heading in a direction where we're integrating more with technology. And if you can leverage that and see where we're going and find how to be there before the masses get there, then you're going to have an upside that no one else, and especially your competition, doesn't, that no one else has. So real quick, this is pretty much the end of it. I know everybody's ready to get out. I do want to open up for a quick question and answer session. If anybody has any questions about emergent technology, podcasting, Alexa, any of that stuff.
So in Florida, I feel like we're really far deep, a little bit more so than some of the areas I worked in South Carolina, where a lot of the agents
Definitely than Greenwood, yes.
Yeah, chat bots into their Facebook and their website. Do y'all know what a chat bot is? Has anybody here ever heard of a chat bot? Okay, so when you go to a website like Amazon or eBay or whatever, even like a clothing store, and you see like this little chat window at the bottom pop up, and you can type in there and ask for a question, right? And you get a response immediately. Well, that is an automatic response. It's not actually, but it's intelligent. It's artificial intelligence that they've had programmers go in and develop. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, this company did, to develop that software for that company so that when you're typing and asking questions, it can find the right answer for you, and you feel like you're engaging with the actual person, but really it's artificial intelligence. It's that chat bot. Well, now that technology is available for even at an affordable level for even small businesses like my real estate business. I use chatbots for my personal real estate website and my Facebook page. So that way, like if somebody emails my Facebook business page about a listing or something, I've got it set up built in now with a chatbot where it can engage like it's me and collect their information and even set an appointment for me that is my Visita. That's something that is utilized now by realtors all over the state of Florida now, I see, and I think that you'll see that here up at a great deal. And I don't know if you know anybody that sets those up here, but we have people.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, especially if they're not doing it here, somebody in here needs to do it.
Well, it's
right?
just a way to make money and engage and make people feel
frees
like
up your time. It's convenience.
Like, I'm not having to take time up to do it. They get an immediate response.
But you have to be careful too with some of this artificial intelligence stuff because
make sure it works right.
But there is that line you cross where people can tell, right? Like they wanted an interaction with a real person, right? So there's a way to structure the chat bot to where it does serve a purpose, but don't let it replace the human interaction. I mean, you get to that back to the 7 levels of human communication or seven levels of communication. Nothing replaces face-to-face.
Right.
And if you can utilize that as a tool to drive the face-to-face.
That's what you're trying to do. Everything you do on Facebook, email blast, like anything you're doing phone call-wise needs to be geared, that you're using with your technology has to be geared to support the in-person, face-to-face human connections and relationships, because that's the framework you're going to build your business on. what he's talking about with artificial intelligence and the new technology that's coming into play, that should just be used to support
It's just a
those
tool.
efforts, those tools to support efforts of continuing to grow, not to tear the face-to-face down, but to enforce it.
Exactly.
Reinforce
And I
it.
want to also be clear that all of this emergent technology, I'm not encouraging you to go out and say or see, like, this is what's next. Let me jump over here. Let me jump over here. It's not about that at all. It's about seeing how human psychology and how humanity ties into this, and to really understand that this could be a tool that could drive that conversation, not because people have that issue where they have the shiny thing syndrome and they never really understand where they want to focus their energy. These are just tools. All of these are just tools. They can take over your life, so be careful. Any other questions? Cool. All right, so one more thing I do have, I did want to say, if you do want to have a report on my website at drapernorwood.com, which kind of goes into a lot more of this stuff. If you want to check it out, you can do that. And I guess I'll hand it back over.